Welcome to Salve, a therapeutic podcast for digital ailments. We're here to ease your online aches and entrepreneurial anxieties, one session at a time. With our host, Jordan Brannon, and today's guest, Rebecca Fairbanks from Coalition Technologies. Today's worrying condition, the confusion that comes when you don't know how to walk.
Good day to you all. I'm Jordan Brannon, and I am the host of Salve, a podcast and video series that Coalition Technologies is putting out to help you treat your digital aches and pains, your digital ailments, those things that challenge you as a member of a business that is really looking to grow through digital means. So today we're going to be jumping into a really, I think, an important conversation where we look at the confusion and the fuzziness of mind that is occurring when you are trying to figure out how to market your business through digital channels. There are so many channels out there. There are so many different places for you to engage in marketing, so many different ways to spend your money and your time and your creative energies. And we're going to hopefully help you get away from that place of, I don't know how to move. I don't know how to walk. I don't know how to run. And I have a really awesome guest with us today, someone near and dear to me. Rebecca, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your role at Coalition for those who don't know? And we'll jump into this conversation.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name is Rebecca Fairbanks. I am the Vice President of Marketing Services here at Coalition Technologies. I've been with the company for 11 years, so I've had, I think, the great pleasure and fortune of seeing so many changes, not just to our business, but I think all of the businesses that we've been able to touch and impact, which has been a huge motivational source for me in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, awesome. I know when I first got into digital marketing and Joel and I were starting to do basically SEO and a little bit of paid search, because those are really the only channels that were accessible to the small business in the early 2000s. It felt challenging even then, and it still felt like you had to kind of make educated guesses as to where to put your time and your dollars. And now we have more channels than ever. I think like 11 years ago, we were probably mainly focused on SEO and pay-per-click. Social media marketing at the time was really about like flash mobs, trying to go viral. And there was like a nascent paid social, any other things that were happening back then, early days that like really were like maybe have died already. They've already gone the way of the dinosaur.
I mean, kind of, it's like, at the time, the question we used to get a lot from customers, I think, and just our brands was that they wanted to know how their social media presence was going to impact their SEO. That was a question we used to get on repeat. And the answer at the time was always, it doesn't. It's not going to do much for you. Google wasn't interacting with that content, not in a way that we see it doing today, which is exciting. But the answer was it doesn't. Now, it didn't mean it didn't have value. It just didn't have value in terms of, hey, this is going to boost how you are performing in Google's ranks.
Yeah.
So that has changed, I think, substantially. I think, too, just the emergence of so many tools has made it really cloudy and confusing. Not just for big businesses, but I think moderate to small as well. It's just become, I think, harder for people to focus and really look at, well, hey, what should I be looking at? What matters to me most in terms of where I'm at with my brand today? And I think that's been the biggest struggle, is kind of teaching people where they should look, what matters today. So it's shifted a lot, and it's continuing to shift a lot, obviously. But I think just in terms of where we're at today, it's not even the same landscape, basically.
Yeah, no, I mean, you've got SEO, you've got AI SEO or GEO or whatever you want to use for your acronym. You have paid search, you have paid social. There are more major paid social channels. Back in the day, it was Facebook, and that was basically it. Now you have Instagram, you have Snap, you have TikTok, you have Pinterest. You have organic efforts towards all of the same. You have community type sites like Reddit that are getting involved. We have email marketing. We have cold email marketing. We have SMS. We have affiliates. We have influencers. There's just is so many different ways to spend your time and efforts as a digital marketer, as a company, again, just trying to find that foothold. So I guess maybe as like a beginning point to the conversation, I always like to sort of talk about like What's the at-home remedy? Like, okay, I've got a little bit of this confusion getting out of bed this morning. I kind of forgot how to walk. What do I do next? Like, what do you think is like the most important sort of baseline self-reflection, personal analysis that you would offer to someone, again, who's trying to pick where to put their time, where to put their money? Like, any particular tips that you would give them?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that we see so commonly here at Coalition is the brands that come in with a little bit of word of mouth already kind of built up
Mm,
behind them. That really acts as a force multiplier. It kind of helps these brands come in. They've got a little bit, and I'm not even talking about you need 1,000 reviews or
no,
anything crazy. I'm talking about a couple of really great reviews, a couple great testimonials. Can people put those on videos for you? Even just a little bit of word of mouth can be a serious starter, I think,
yeah,
to someone's marketing. And I think the good part about that is it doesn't take a heck of a lot of effort usually to get that.
yeah, right,
You know, you take 1 or 2 customers and they're willing to do kind of a testimonial for you. They do the video run through. You can post it to social. You
yeah,
can, feed it onto your website. It's just a great starting point. So I always like to give brands things that they can do from home, like you mentioned. And I think obtaining those reviews is honestly like you want to pick one thing you can start with at home. Please do that.
yeah,
Please go grab those because we can do a lot with that even when you do come perhaps agency side
yeah.
to start boosting that and using that to kind of feed that credibility. And that's helpful for Google, who looks for those credibility signals.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've talked about EAT yet on the podcast, but that does help with that. But I always tell people if you do nothing else, focus on getting some reviews. And
Yeah,
again, don't worry about I need thousands. I need that. You just get a couple
yeah,
good ones, and
yeah.
make it run.
Yeah, and we haven't touched on EAT yet, but we will for sure. Well, it's an acronym used in the SEO industry, especially to sort of give you a framework for how to think about your content and your marketing. I do love the review piece, partially because I think it does force you as a business to do two things first. One is it actually helps you differentiate in the market. Like, what about your business or your product or your service is commendation worthy? Like, if you've figured that out, you've figured out a place where you can start to grow. And again, like, this is actually like a really important way of sort of gauging business health and competition and placement in the market. As if people are no longer wanting to give you good reviews, if that just doesn't sort of come somewhat naturally, then you've probably lost some of that edge. And so if you're a startup business, small, first year, proof of concept, if you can start getting people who are willing to give you that 5-star review, rave about your product, rave about your service, it really should be like, like, hey, this is going to work. Like, that's going to work if I get those. If it's not happening yet, start to fine tune, refine, work on actually trying to be, again, more commendation worthy. Because if people are sending in those bits of feedback to you, they're shopping, they're hiring, they're doing things with other businesses, and their feedback to you, it doesn't, again, positive reviews just don't come easy for a lot of businesses, especially in a very competitive market. So if you're earning some, again, you know that you've got it right. And it is a super valuable place for you to start your marketing efforts and use in all of your marketing channels. So even regardless of which channel you're going to go to, like, having those reviews are great for paid ads, great for email, great for SEO. They're great in a lot of different ways and a lot of different places. So getting them is really, really helpful. So that's a really strong call out, Rebecca. And maybe one final thought on that, like, that force multiplier comment. One of the challenges we'll get as an agency, as marketers, is we're handed a bad product or a bad service or a bad business, frankly, and the expectation is that we can really grow that. And we're basically always going to be fighting against some of the ill health of the business. If that's the case, so good marketing, you don't want it to be a force multiplier on bad fundamentals. And so being in that spot where you're getting those positive reviews and you've got some good fundamentals really helps us accelerate those things instead of, again, amplifying what's problematic there. Any other tips that are really helpful, you think, for, again, and maybe just looking at like which channel to invest in as a startup? Like, what are some of the key criteria to decide if I should go and focus on SEO? Should I focus on paid? Should I focus on this or that? Like, what is sort of a simple framework someone could use to help figure out where to invest that marketing time and money?
Yeah. And so I think, I think this is going to largely vary for a lot of businesses. And I think obviously my framework's a rough one, right? Like I've been doing SEO for like 15 years. So I think for me, SEO is going to always be the end all be all, especially as it's evolving with AI. You know, people are still, the lion's share of that traffic is coming from Google, right? People are still using Google to largely do their searching. But as they start to shift and that starts to open up and we're seeing some of that migrate over to the chat GPTs and the perplexities, you've got to be positioned, you've got to be there. And I think
Yeah.
most people want to be the response to those queries or be a cited source in AI. And we see that a lot, with our brands. And that's largely, I think, where a lot of our strategies now are so focused. But I think SEO should always kind of be the underpinning of everything you are doing. So again, you're building on top. So think of marketing as stackable channels.
Mm.
You're always kind of adding these layers of support, and that's how you grow and elevate your business. So your marketing should always be integrated, just meaning that all of these channels are kind of weaving and working together, and they're building something really great for you.
Yeah.
I always say, end all be all, start with SEO because they call it the long game. You probably, some of you may have heard us say that, if you work with us. But it's true. It does take some time to build that result. And so there is a level of patience that you do need with it. But once it starts to take off, it is a very powerful workhorse for you in your marketing. So I always tell people, no matter what, start SEO because it's going to be something you need no matter what avenue you plan to take with your business. But I think also looking at your budget and what you've got kind of in front of you is important too, because some of our brands come in and they do need to start kind of turning that profit a lot faster. And so just depending on kind of where you're at, what that money flow looks like. Paid, I think, is the other channel that we typically see our brands invest in early on. And again, you can play with your paid budget. So you don't have to, come in and say, oh, well, I don't have more than, $2,000 to spend on paid in terms of, we can do a lot with a little too. And so you can always kind of start. And I think the point with paid is that you don't start at one budget. You're going to scale that budget over time. You can come in with a pretty nominal spend of a budget. You maybe focus on something like Google Ads, which is a great hallmark platform to start with. Most of our brands do very well. So you start with something like Google Ads and you work with us to scale that. Or if you're doing that independently, you start that and you're working through that. You're scaling that budget over time and continuing to kind of reap the rewards from that before you start to look at other platforms. Because like you mentioned, there's so many platforms you can do paid on now. It's kind of crazy. And again, like you have to kind of look at, my business, my industry, all of these kind of revolving factors as to like what channels are going to be the best for you. But typically we're going to always go in with Google Ads because I think it's the one that I think is going to work for the majority of brands out there. I'd say 99% are going to do well on something like a Google Ads, but then you start to weave in, the meta ads and now you're pumping over Facebook and Instagram, which is also, I think, really helpful for a lot of the brands. So I always tell people if I was going to start anywhere, and from what I've seen of all these thousands of businesses we've worked with, it's organic and paid. You really, I think, want to niche those and start there, and I think grow from that point.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts that came to mind as you're talking through it. I think one of the things to understand, even as a small business and a solopreneur, you're starting kind of getting things going, is think about your marketing channels not so much like parallel freeways, like that are running in one particular direction, but think about like how you navigate your hometown or the major metro area near you in traffic. Like Google is going to have you take a right on a side street, take a left back onto like a 4-lane road, take another left to get back to the on-ramp, and then you're on the highway for 10 minutes, and then it's going to take you off. And like that is how people navigate the web today. That is how they shop. That is how they hire. And so like if you think about a typical customer journey for you, plan that marketing strategy so that you're hitting those main thoroughfares because that's where most people are. But you're also starting to think about some of these side streets and invest a little bit of money, a little bit of time because people will check. So think again, you called this out, like SEO, I think is going to be the foundation for how digital marketing continues to move ahead, especially in the AI era. But like, if I start a search, I'm looking for a painter, a residential painter near me in my particular area. I'm probably starting with Google. Now, Google is going to give me 5 websites that give me reviews and ratings. 5 of them are probably all places you can run paid ads. They probably are all places where they have their own ranking algorithms. And so maybe I click over into a Yelp, which is have a little bit of a resurgent moment thanks to Apple. And I'm looking at Yelp and I'm sort of seeing the reviews and the content that's been optimized there. Like again, that's that little side street. And so be thinking about like how your primary customer is going to navigate, commit to that one major channel, and then build and make sure you're not ignoring some of those little extra thoroughfare pieces that come through. And again, we'll feed those people back into you, make sure they reinforce you. On the AI piece, because I think this is so huge, I've said that I think AI is going to consolidate and collapse the open web in a way that we really haven't seen happen. And I think that's because AIs are really aiming to be your operating system. So they don't want to be just a website you visit. They don't want to be one of 50 apps because there's not enough money there. And there really isn't a good reason, right? Like, if you think about what you're doing today in apps, they're taking, in the AI apps, they're taking the place of 10 different apps that you're already using. We know that Google has ambitions of having Gemini read your email and be able to plan around your calendar and create docs. And so we're seeing this consolidation. A lot of the AIs are pulling in YouTube videos, or pulling in social content from Instagram. And so I think their goal is to actually move into that operating system place where 90% of all of your interactions and all of your content consumption really happens through that AI. And SEO is really one of the only ways for you to be present in all of those activities. And so I think SEO is not only fundamental today because of Google's prominence, but I think it's going to be even more so as we see maybe Google, maybe ChatGPT, whoever that is, win that AI race. Would you disagree with that for any reason, Rebecca? Or maybe
No,
your own thoughts on that at all?
no, I largely agree. I mean, I think too, we've been saying for quite some time that we at some point feel like what's going to start to emerge. I was just training on this last night with the team, but we were talking about the fact that we just at some point feel that websites will become more of almost like a brochure for you. They are your presence, they are your name, they have the content that you feel embodies your brand, and you're largely using that to kind of position yourself so that as these AI tools are kind of pulling in information and culminating info, they're wanting to grab from you. And so again, when you think about that prominence and that importance, you got to look at SEO as the strategy to help you do that, I think, in a lot of ways, because again, it's that positioning of your site as these AI tools are coming through and they're trying to scrape information and get information that's valuable to a search query. You've got to
Hmm.
be there and you've got to be positioned to do that. But again, like all these channels that they're kind of scraping from and they're pulling from,
Yeah.
it's where you want to give your time and your attention, right? So it is those social channels. It is the Reddits. Reddit is a big source of where these tools pull from. And we see that every
Yep.
day when we're looking at sourcing and things like that. And so, again, even just your website, making sure you're answering standard queries
Mm,
in your content, all of that is going to be really helpful fodder. And again, it's not even just for the chat GPTs, right?
yeah.
I mean, Google AI overviews. I mean,
Hmm.
you get an answer through an AI overview, and who doesn't want to be the source
Yep.
for that information, right? And so when you're thinking contextually about that, you want to think about, well, how do I position myself to be that answer, to be
Yep.
that response?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Any other tips for that early phase? And maybe also just as a kind of way of branching us out into the next step, like when is it a good time to start to consider that dedicated marketing hire, whether that's in-house or freelance or an agency like ours that does specialize in supporting small businesses? Like what is sort of the pain points that you would have maybe it's those particular decision moments where it starts to become wise to consider like, hey, branching out into new channels, investing more, or even making that higher.
yeah, I mean, I think we see kind of a a mix of factors, I should say, with our brands. So some of them, it becomes necessity just because of time commitment. So some of our brands, like they're business owners, right? So they're wearing so many hats already that adding marketing to it is just not the best fit. They
Hmm.
don't have a ton of time and a ton of resource to do it. And so it makes sense to kind of bring somebody in that can kind of more fully dedicate themselves to that effort while they are in the background
Yep.
doing those operational things and helping to grow the line and do some of these other things that I think are so foundational to the brand.
Yep.
So I think that's always a good time when you're kind of looking at that growth and wanting to move that forward. I think too, we see a lot of times with our brands, like they are in a place where they've got some budget now. They've got,
Yep.
some ability to kind of put some money out there and kind of work with that to see what that can return for them. And so they want to put that into a digital strategy, which is a great investment.
Yep.
So that would be kind of another place. But I think outside of that, I don't think that anybody should ever pull themselves off the table from being ready for an agency.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really boils down to what your priorities are, what your plans are to expand the brand, and how you plan to do that. And letting that digital strategy, I think, just support that on the underpinning.
Yeah.
So as we're kind of positioning and we're pushing your products, your services, you're kind of working on some of that foundational work that I think grows the brand. So I don't think there really is like a right time or place to do it. I do think, though, I think having a little bit of support to be able to really fund these strategies, because again, some strategies are going to pull in results a lot faster than others.
Mm-hmm.
That should be a factor, right?
Yeah.
I think it should, in terms of, budget. If you're coming in and, you don't have more than a month that you can really run a campaign, that's going to be pretty tough on you from a results standpoint. So stability
it's
matters.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would call out, I think, like one of the things, like a lot of times this is true for hiring freelancers, this is true for hiring an agency. There's a little bit less personal investment made in those hiring decisions, meaning because you're hiring a company or somebody who's distant from you, it's often easier to make those hires, which means you sometimes rush into them. I would say, really whether you're going to hire a freelancer or an agency or consultant of some kind, do make sure you treat it with the same significance like you would treat someone when you're hiring them and going to have them working every day, like with you. A lot of companies, they budget for that sort of staff hire, they budget for that full-time employee, and they plan to be able to make that work for 6 months. I don't know of a lot of companies that are so out of touch and impersonal that they'll hire somebody and not have a plan to be able to, support them if they're doing well for the next 3 months or 4 months or 5 months or whatever it is. But agencies and freelancers, I sometimes see companies come in and we're talking to them and we're like talking about budget. And it's like, if I don't make, 100,000% return on ad spend this week, this business closes. Don't hire us at that point. Like you're talking about like an emergency. You're probably talking about needing a miracle. I'd go to your local religious institution and offer some financial gifts to the gods to bring a miracle to you. That's just not what you want to be hiring an agency for. So do have that sort of commitment in mind. We need to learn the business. We need to learn your particulars. We need to learn how your personality is reflected. And we also have, even inside of categories which do a lot of work for fashion, health, beauty, wellness, CBD, THC, all these different spaces that we work in, like it's really important for us to learn your audience, like who are you connecting with already, and then be able to amplify the strength there. So that's, I think, is a really important call out. Looking at kind of maybe just as a rapid fire way to close, give me sort of like a top to bottom list and kind of a rapid fire for each of our big channels or the big channels that are out there, like who it's best for, maybe by business category or type of business, and then also like when you really should think about doubling down on that particular channel. So like we'll tackle. Let's start with like SEO. We'll move pay per click with paid search, paid social, organic social, and then email marketing and SMS to sort of finish us out. But like, just kind of give me like a 1 or 2 sentence, like, hey, this is best for this. This is who should invest and when you should jump in on that channel, and then we'll go on from there.
Yeah. So I think if we're starting with SEO, I think that's the one where I would just say that's an everybody. Everybody has got to get in on that game, right? Like, there's nobody that should be off the table for that. There isn't a business type that's not gonna be great for. Now, I think, if we've talked about like some of the more maybe the more difficult industries, if we're talking about like the CBD and the cannabis, or even like adult toys, things like that, there could be some barriers. It could be a little bit tougher, with some of the algorithms that Google's put in place, but it's still the place for you. It's still a place that you want to, I think, largely invest in. So I'd say SEO is an everybody game, whether you're new business, pre-existing, everybody, I think, needs a piece of that pie, just based on what we were saying a little bit earlier today.
Okay. What about pay per click? Let's give me a paid search specific. I'll keep it narrow.
Yeah, we'll keep it narrow. So paid search, we're talking like Google and things like that. Again, I think that is kind of an everybody game too. But I think, in general, because again, we're talking like, whether you're e-com, whether you're lead gen, people are searching for products and businesses directly on Google. And that's the primary place they do that. So
Yep.
I'm gonna say that most brands again are gonna want to invest in that as a channel. That becomes
Any
almost like again the staple, I feel
any
like.
particular dollar amount, like where you feel like it's wise? Like, what's the sort of monthly run rate, and how many months would you recommend for paid search that someone be ready?
Yeah. So I mean, I think as far as budgets go, like I don't typically like to see us go beneath 1,000 for
Okay.
spend. So typically we're working in increments of thousands. So we're talking, somebody comes in, they're going to do $2,000 a month or 3,000, and then scaling up.
Yep.
Um, so I think that's kind of what I would look at there. In terms of just scaling in general too, we tell brands to really be looking at kind of the 6-month mark as more of
Hmm.
a hallmark standpoint, just
Yep.
generally meaning that by that point you should be starting to see some early profitability there. And again, these things can accelerate
Hmm.
just based on any history you have. So let's say you had somebody running some paid for you prior.
Yep.
That can really help accelerate how quickly we're able to turn those results. And as an agency here, I know we are endlessly committed to speeding up that time to result. That's, I
Yep.
think, the thing we're the most after here.
Yeah, I'd jump in on that. I'd say like that 6 month budget is so important. If you're doing $1,000, you want to be able to say $1,000 a month for 6 months. A big thing that a lot of advertisers or businesses don't understand is that Meta and Google both have sort of pushed into this machine learning, algorithmic, AI driven sort of audience and ad targeting thing. I don't think they even really know what they've done and where the end state of it is yet, but it does require this learning period as we're launching new ad campaigns, targeting new audiences. There's just this sort of machine learning process that they want to be able to execute. So if your budget's too small, if you can't run long enough, it's going to get in the way of you actually understanding how to scale. You might have like a win. You might get a couple of big sales, big hires, big contracts that come through. That might be great for you, but you'll be kind of coin flipping every month until you're really able to sustain that. So that's a good call out. What about paid social? And then we'll look at organic social, and maybe within like that, like we could touch on like which particular channels, social networks are. It's a funny term. It feels dated now. Are sort of relevant to maybe particular types of businesses.
Yeah, so social is always kind of the toss up here, I feel like at Coalition. But I feel like, especially the ecom brands, they're typically the ones that I think do the best and they have the most
Yeah.
engagement. I think that's a big part of it, right? Is like with social, it's not just about what you put out there, it's about the engagement you get back.
Mm.
And so I feel like our ecom brands, they tend to do the best. People want to communicate a little bit more readily, they want to give feedback on products. It's just a little bit more standard, I think, but lead gens do well too. I think it just depends the industry at points, as far as that interaction level goes. But I would say like for the paid social specifically, again, we're talking about putting budget out there. You're trying to make as much as you can off of those channels. I feel like the ecom brands typically are doing the best. So we're seeing a lot of success with fashion, beauty,
Mm.
we do get hints of that too with health and wellness, although there's a little bit of gray area there sometimes about what you can and can't do
Yeah. Hmm.
on those platforms. We do have to be kind of careful about regulation there. But they tend to kind of do the best. So I feel like when, we're looking at social and we're looking at, again, social proof, again,
Hmm.
getting people to interact with you. Those are good places, I think, for some of those brands to start.
Awesome. And I'll call out maybe, and it might be a good transition point to that organic social side as well. Like with paid social and with organic social, the more interesting you can be, the more success you're going to have. Like I think businesses just sort of forget. I think there's so much emphasis on scaled campaigns, campaign technical structuring, the technical build of your content strategy, your targeting analytics, that sometimes businesses just forget to be interesting. And so if your content is boring, if you're boring, if your products are boring, if your services are boring, you're going to naturally make it more difficult for yourself to succeed. Businesses that become interesting and find a way to be interesting really will do better in social. Like the Dollar Shave Club, they had sort of that infamous first video. I was just talking to another one of our guests about a company called Big Ass Fans. Guess what? They sell fans for ceilings, which is kind of as boring as you can get. But they decided to call themselves Big Ass Fans, and their marketing fits in with that. Liquid Death, again, like is another brand where like it could be a pretty boring product if you marketed it like everybody else, like the I'm working out, sweat wipe off my brow, drink. Like, okay, fine. We've seen that ad a million times, but they chose to be interesting and it really helped them out. So I'd call that. So maybe looking at organic social, like what criteria would you say for business? Because I think this is actually a really tough channel to get meaningful lift
It is.
without sort of that viral break. Like who would you say is like really like criteria that should be really helpful in picking whether or not you go in heavily on organic social as your way to grow?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general the brands that kind of have a little bit of a unique story to tell are going to typically do better because again, same principle where, you know, you're trying to find something that's engaging, that's hooky so
Hmm.
you can connect with an audience. And so we found a lot of success, especially with like our jewelry businesses actually.
Yeah.
They tend to do really well. There's typically a really like I think sweet story or sentiment behind a lot of those brands and why
Mm.
they're selling the product they do, and that translates so well on social. So again, I think when you're thinking about like how can I make my foray here, and this counts whether you're doing paid or organic social.
Hmm.
It's how am I telling the story and how
Yep.
engaging is the story, and so I think you can literally be any kind of brand, and if you can tell the story well, you're probably going to do pretty well.
Yep.
But I will say one caveat that maybe we didn't touch on is thinking about if you are going to invest in it more,
Mm.
gotta have a little bit of an audience behind you. And so
Yeah.
you gotta kind of build it a little bit, you know? I think
Hmm.
even with our brands, we don't typically recommend an actual monetary investment in more social, especially organic social, until there is a little bit of an audience so
Yeah.
that we're putting out these messages, these great videos, and we want it to have a little bit of a foothold, right? Where there's a little bit of an audience that we're kind of throwing that out to, and
Hmm.
then you're kind of burgeoning, you're growing it from there. So we are typically looking for a little bit of a follower or an audience count, if that makes sense,
Yep.
before we're going balls to the walls
Yep.
with it.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and I do think like you can buy your way in, but again, that's a budgeting thing. Like you can get in front of influencers, be
sure.
real strategic there. I think I've seen a lot of small businesses just way overspend for the wrong influencer. And I would also go back to that early conversation. Like if people aren't really excited about your product yet or your services yet, like that's if you just are, if people are kind of like ho hum, it does the job, it's a good value, fine. It's just going to be more difficult to be successful in organic social. And so if that's the tone that you're getting back from customers, like maybe pump the brakes a little bit because again, it just is going to be you're pushing that rock up the hill all the time. But if you do have a lot of excitement from your customers, if they're really interested and they're talking a lot, they're raving about your products, your service, your brand, whatever that is, like that's usually an indicator like, hey, social could work because I can get these people to amplify my voice. I can take what they're saying and they're super excited about, and I can turn that into some sort of commercial or marketing effort.
Yeah, and
La-
that's
but
your unique selling proposition
hmm
too, no? I mean, it's
Yep.
like if they're telling you this is what's so great about you, that should be all over your website. You universal selling proposition it up at that point. It should be everywhere.
Yep. And it's probably a good call out for our web design development teams. Um, Part of what we do really well, I think, on the design development side is we bring together all of these marketing strategies and we make your website a really good centerpiece and distribution center for something for social, for email, for SEO, for pay-per-click. And we know how to handle those audiences and allow one landing page, if your budget's thin, to sort of work for all of the above and be successful on that front. Last marketing one, and we'll wrap up for our time today. And we'll obviously have you back to talk more shop in the CyberSalve podcast. But email and SMS, a lot of brands sort of forget about them. They do some very basic work on this particular front. But when, where, why should brands be jumping in on these particular channels?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things we always start our brands out with is figuring out where is the vehicle in which people are going to enroll to receive
Mm.
emails from you. And that's everybody, right? Like
Yep.
everybody's got to have that because again, that's like free messaging right there, right? People are signing up, they're going into your email database, and now you are free to push messages to these people whenever you want to.
Hmm.
You can choose to give them updates about what's going on with your brand, new products and services. Sales are always a good one. Obviously, we're getting ready for Black Friday, Cyber Monday here, so I think that's going to be a big piece of the pie for our brands. But you've got kind of this unending world here of people that you can now start to reach out to. So I think that's a great place to start. I do think we put a pretty big emphasis on that, like I said, for all of our brands, but I feel like for lead gen, it's also been really, really helpful.
Yeah. Hmm.
So our service-based businesses, especially like they're running a special or there's a promotion or they're showing a case study, there's a testimonial that they want to show. That can really be, I think, helpful to help just get, again, more customers in the door. So I think that should be a part of the strategy. But again, you need a little bit of a base. So it's like start collecting those emails, start getting a little bit of a base behind yourself. And then it might make more sense for you to actually invest in it as a channel. We're not
Yeah.
going to push somebody to invest in email marketing that doesn't have, a decent list that we're starting with again,
Yep.
because you're blasting these messages out and you want to return from that effort, right? So we got to have a little bit of something that we're starting with. So it's like start collecting those emails early on in your business, in your infancy, and kind of take it from there.
Yeah, and I would call out, I think one of the things, like, this is probably really valuable, is start and set up the basics of email and SMS early in your campaign. Like I would say, like, you want to have some of your drips set up. The drips are just these automated little emails that'll go out to somebody who's signed up on a contact form, made a purchase. And you want to have that engagement happening, because if you are in that small business space, like it is, it's a time thing that, like, if you were to want to email a thank you and 7 follow-up emails, like with more interesting things about your business and why they should buy again or hire again or leave a review, there's so much work for you. So just do spend the time to get some basics set up on the email front. It's worth the investment. There's very affordable email marketing service providers. And then as you grow, you are accumulating that list. You are starting to get data back, like which of these emails works well, which of these emails doesn't work well. Can I fine tune the messaging? Can I update it with new content and new products or new services? And over time, you'll start to see, like, this really does become kind of a little bit of like the momentum for your business. Like SEO, you build and you get momentum going, and then it stays with you if it's done right. Email can do the same thing. Like if you've been doing it for a while, you've built up some of these basic automations and you've taken care of those things, they start to give you some healthy momentum that allows you to ignore, I'm going to be sad to say if you're like a small business, but ignore maybe email for a little bit so you can focus on paid, you can focus on social, you can do some more things with your budget, and email just keeps producing for you. Don't look away from it altogether. But once you have that audience that's built up, start looking at bringing in a professional to help refine that process for you as well. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being on with us. We'll be excited to have you back again here as we get more into the weeds, perhaps on AI SEO. But really do appreciate your insights for those who are out there and are just struggling to get their feet under them and get some momentum for their businesses in digital marketing.
For sure. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. We'll be back soon with another episode. We'll be talking about some naming strategies, how to pick your business name, how to find a domain name, all of that sort of good stuff. So that's coming soon. Stay tuned. Do subscribe to make sure you catch all our content. You can subscribe to our newsletter. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can subscribe on any of the major podcasting platforms, and we'll be there for you with some more insights into how to cure your digital aches and pains. Bye for now.